how many times you save the world, it always manages to get back in jeopardy again. I mean, sometimes I just want it to stay saved, you know?
There's something strange about seeing the remnants of epic events, seeing iconic locations, tools, and scars of great battles. Imagine driving past Wayne Manor, now empty and dilapidated. Imagine walking across a battlefield trying to reminisce about the time man-eating giants walked the earth. Imagine coming across a tattered costume in the wild, documenting a strange figure known as Spider-Man, and for some reason feeling melancholic about figures and events you could never witness. There are videos and physical material relating to them, but as far as you know, they are now lost to time. In my video When Heroes Were Real, I spoke about how certain images and videos can induce a certain feeling from the viewer, a sense that these characters truly existed at some point in the past, but now are remnants of a bygone era. I think there's something very interesting about that, heroes being around during a sort of golden age, but now have become historical figures, akin to mythological and biblical stories. It looks like this concept is pretty popular among different fan bases and creatives, as this concept has been explored in many pieces of media, and there's two ways creatives try to achieve this effect.
You seem to be holding up pretty well.
I could use some of that Kryptonian DNA.
You'll outlive us all, Bruce. You're too stubborn to die.
One way is through in-universe continuity, by utilizing the flow of time and how heroes no longer exist in the world. There are darker stories out there, one set in the distant future, where the heroes unfortunately meet a cruel end, perhaps due to a powerful threat or forces beyond their control. These heroes met their ultimate end. Years have passed, and these heroes are now a fading memory. And in stories such as this, one singular hero or group of them must rise to the occasion and restore hope to a dying world. Now, many stories approach this concept in different ways, and often these narratives are darker and oppressive.
And there came a day unlike any other, when Earth's mightiest heroes were united against a common threat. The soldier, the god, the knight, the spy, the giant, the king, the pixie, the ghost, and the archer.
However, the story Next Avengers, Heroes of Tomorrow strangely has one of the saddest takes on this concept. The film explores an apocalyptic future where the Avengers were killed by Ultron, with others like Thor escaping to Asgard, and Hulk going into hiding, and Tony Stark becoming a surrogate father, raising the children of these fallen heroes to maybe one day train them to be strong enough to face off against Ultron.
I raised you all, hopefully as your parents would have wanted. I owed it to them. Ultron was my fault.
Why didn't my father help?
Thor left the Avengers when his father Odin died. He said Asgard was his responsibility from then on, not Earth.
Imagine you're a child of a famous hero. However, you know nothing about what they were like. You see remnants of their lives through archival footage and photos, but you'll never get to meet them yourself. Worse yet, you know certain heroes do still exist in this world, but due to crippling fear, choosing other responsibilities, or being ashamed of running away, they've chosen to rather forsake everything than fighting for what's right. And as a kid, I remember really disliking this film because of just how depressing the world was. Not every story explores the idea of heroes dying tragically within an apocalyptic world, but the death of them as an idea. Stories like Watchmen and The Incredibles were worlds in which heroes were a part of everyday life, involved in small, medium to large-scale threats, and because there were so many of them, you could be sure you'd run into a hero at every corner. However, in these worlds, For whatever reason, heroes became outlawed by the government or due to inconvenient public actions, such as citizens suing the heroes in The Incredibles. These heroes went into hiding, finding it more convenient to stay locked away than pursuing any kind of heroic actions, with heroes now being illegal vigilantes or government agents. There's another way creatives use this idea of heroes being historical figures, and that's usually done through the context of imitating reality, creating a story, an online work, news interviews, books, or films that don't treat these characters like they're fictional, but genuine events and figures that existed in our world. Take the story Batman 1919 for example. The story Batman 1919 to 1939 is a fictional history created by Giant Panda King. The book is a fictionalized, detailed account of Gotham City's decades-long history, the many villains and important figures that inhabited it, and most importantly, the exploits of a figure known as Batman, who shortly appeared after the end of World War I to fight the exponentially rising crime rate. What I love about Batman 1919 to 1939 is just how extensive, detailed, and rich the universe is, creating intrinsic backstories for many of the Batman supporting cast and villains, while leaving just enough room for interpretation. Batman himself wasn't known to be Bruce Wayne until years after his death. What's interesting is that after his confrontation with the villain Azrael, who took over the mantle after Bruce Wayne became paralyzed from his fight with the villain Bane, Batman actually disappeared for several years. It's unknown why this happened, but what we do know is that he'd return years later to take on a new threat known as the mutants. Batman isn't the only character with a cryptic backstory. Joker, for example, is a character who appeared a few years after Batman. He isn't given a definitive backstory, as even to this day, nobody knew who he truly was. However, considering that a lot of characters have ties to World War I think the Joker must have been a soldier for the war who suffered from immense trauma, returning to Gotham City, a changed man who saw how much of a joke society was, deciding to take up a life of crime. Harvey Dent was reinvented to be a close friend of Bruce Wayne, who became scarred during the war as his face was blown up by a grenade, having to wear a tin mask for most of his life until he snapped and transformed into the villain Two-Face. The Riddler was an intelligent man who one day, while attending university, came across a certain philosophy that changed his life forever. A philosophy which stated that once a man reached a certain level of consciousness, they were no longer bound by the morals of men. Embracing this idea, due to his high intellect, worked to construct the perfect crime. However, as he kept murdering, he'd eventually include riddles in his murders as a way to torment and taunt the police. There are plenty of other characters who are given reinvented backstories to fit in with this new setting in the story. There's so many other events that took place in this world, such as the Shadow War, the Court of Owls, and other historical events, which you can learn more about by reading the book yourself or checking out the Batfeeds documentary series about the book.